Okay, we're up to Kuf Tes Amid Aleph, 4 lines into the page, but let me just explain. Today's daf has 2 parts. There's from the Mishnah on, which is very easy, Kuf Tes Amid Aleph, 4 lines into the page. From the Mishnah on, it's very easy and it's very pleasant. Up to the Mishnah is a very complex cheshbon that we're sort of in the middle. So let me just try to take a step back and chazer what we're up to. Okay. We said yesterday is a concept called Efshel L'Seichtei Aser. Now, Efshel L'Seichtei, according to Rashi, is basically hands in hand with Chanan, Chaticha Nas Nevela. What it means is, once an item becomes Aser, it's never able to not become Aser. So I'll give you an example. You have 1 ounce of milk that falls onto a 10-ounce meeple. So the meeple's Aser, because it's not part of B'shishim. If you believe Efshel L'Seichtei Aser, it means that meeple will never become mutter. Even if you were to take that meeple and drop it into a pot with 1,000 meeples and 100 times the sauce, whatever, so you'll say, well, the milk left. No. Efshel L'Seichtei Aser means it's aser. And according to Rashi, what it really connects with is chaticha nas nevela, meaning once that meeple becomes an nevela, then there's no way to make it mutter. That's the shita of Efshel L'Seichtei Aser. If you believe Efshel L'Seichtei mutter, that would mean that if 1 ounce of milk falls onto a 10-ounce meeple, the 10-ounce meeple is aser, but if that 10-ounce meeple were to fall into 60 ounces of new things, a third pot, a second pot, a 60 ounce of broth, then the milk will leave, rendering the entire thing permissible, and the meeple will also become permitted. So that was a machlokes. It's a concept of Efshel L'Seichtei Aser, Efshel L'Seichtei mutter. So it said yesterday like this. The Mishnah, the Gemara is attempting to explain how it's a machlokes tanoim whether you should say Efshel L'Seichtei Aser or Chaticha Nas Nevela in essence. So the Gemara, the machlokes was as follows. So we're in the middle of it. The Mishnah says the Brisa says like this. You have a drop of milk that falls onto a meeple, out of the sauce. So it's in a pot, but it's not covered, it's out of the sauce. That meeple becomes aser. Then the Brisa quotes Rabbi Yehuda that Chaticha Atzma Nasas Nevela, Vayiseres Kol HaChatichas Kulon. Then not only is that meeple aser, it asers the entire pot because min b'mino, all the meeples are the same, and therefore the entire pot is a problem. That's Rabbi Yehuda. We'll explain the exact case in a moment. The Chachamim say no. The Chachamim say no. The meatball is not aser, and the whole pot is not aser. As long as the entire pot is 60 times the drop of milk, you're fine. Okay. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the meatball's aser, and then it asers the rest of the meatballs. The Chachamim say everything's fine. So it's sort of opposite extremes. Comes Rabbi, and this is the crux. Rabbi says, Nirin diver Rabbi Yehuda b'shaloi nir v'shaloi kisa, v'diver chachamim b'shanir v'kisa. Says Rabbi, I agree with Rabbi Yehuda to be strict if you stirred the pot, but I agree with the Rabbanon. I agree with Rabbi Yehuda when you did not stir the pot, that it's a problem, but I agree with the chachamim that it's mutter when you stirred the pot. This is all from yesterday, so you got to do yesterday a little bit. But the point is, that Rabbi says, I agree with the Rabbi Yehuda if you did not stir the pot, but I agree with the Chachamim if you stirred the pot. So we said yesterday, what does that mean that he agrees with Rabbi Yehuda if you did not stir the pot? Again, till the Mishnah is tricky. So it says the Gemara yesterday, it's all Chazar of yesterday. According to, what does it mean that I agree with Rabbi Yehuda if he did not stir the pot? What it means is the case is like this. A drop of milk falls on the meeple in the pot, the meeple becomes aser. Then I stirred the pot, stirring that meeple into everything. Rabbi says, I agree that it's a problem. Now, the Gemara says, okay, so now Rabbi is saying it's a problem. Why? Because that meeple is aser, and then you've now entered the meeple into the sauce, and now there's a liquid medium, and now it messes up the entire pot. Let me ask you a question. Why don't we say that meeple becomes permitted? You take that meeple that's aser, you now put it into a pot of 100 times its size. Why don't you say everything's mutter? It must be because Efshel L'Seichtei is aser. That's what we said yesterday. That's the sheet of Rabbi. Efshel L'Seichtei is aser. And therefore, it's a problem if you were to take the meeple and stir it in because it creates it's never going to become permissible. Adarabba, Chaticha Nas Nevela, and then it's min b'mino. It's going to aser the entire pot. Now, Rabbi, it's the same as Chaticha Nas Nevela. Again, honestly, I'm just going to go to the Mishnah. If you don't, you have to chaz yesterday. It's too hard to do it on the spot. So it says the Gemara that just again, this is all review, and that also means that Rabbi agrees with Rav Yehuda that it's a problem where it fell on the meeple and then you stirred it. Rav Yehuda himself actually holds to be usher in every case. Even when you're stirring it as the milk is falling on, Rav Yehuda is also machmer. Why? The second it falls on, you stirred it. L'chora, it should not say chanan because it never penetrated the one meeple. It was instantly stirred in. So he said Rav Yehuda is machmer because he's concerned that you didn't stir it properly. Okay, that is all the shita of Rabbi who is explaining when he agrees with Rav Yehuda. But now we'll pick it up. Amar mar v'divrei chachamim b'shenir v'kisa. But he agrees with the chachamim when you stir the pot. What does that mean? Says the Gemara, my nir, my kisa. When is Rabbi agreeing with the chachamim that it's mutter? Ilay manir b'sayf linir b'tchila. It cannot be a case where it fell on the meeple became also, then you stirred it. Because that's where Rebbe is machmer. We said yesterday, that's when Rebbe is machmer. So when is Rebbe mekel? Rebbe is mekel when it falls onto the meeple, and as it's falling onto the meeple, you already started to stir it in. You already stirred it in, so it was never a shaila independent from the milk to the meeple, it was always the entire pot. Says the Gemara, Elanir metchila sevat saif. The case where Rebbe is lenient is where you stirred it from beginning to end. The kisa mitchila sevat saif. Meaning, and Rebbe, so in other words, Rebbe's shita is, if it falls on the meeple and asers the meeple, and then you stirred it, it's a problem. But if as it's falling on, you stirred it, so then the milk never really penetrated one meeple, it sort of got dissolved into the entire pot, then that's when he's mekel. That's when he agrees with the chachamim. But you know what that means? That's what he agrees with the Chachamim. But the Chachamim are even more extreme. The Chachamim shita is that if the milk falls on the meeple and asers the meeple, then you stir it in, the entire meeple becomes permissible. Meaning Rebbe is saying, I agree with the Chachamim when it's fully stirred the whole time. But if it fell on the meeple and then stirred in, I don't agree with the Chachamim. Meaning, they hold, even in such a situation, where it asers the meeple and then you stir the meeple in, the meeple itself will become permissible once it's shishim kenegdan, which is because they hold efshar l'saychtei mutter. Kisa v'tchila mutter, alma kasavri efshar l'saychtei mutter. In other words, what we've proven is that the machloikes Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon is efshar l'saychtei aser or efshar l'saychtei mutter. Rav Yehuda holds efshar l'saychtei aser, which means once that meeple becomes aser, it will be aser forever, and therefore, if it falls on the meeple and asers it, then when it gets stirred into the pot, it's min b'mino, it's not going to be bottled, the entire pot is a problem, and the Rabbanon hold efshar l'saychtei mutter. We don't say chanan. Therefore, when it falls onto the meeple, and then you stir it in, it'll become permissible, as long as it's 60 times. So the machloikes Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon is efshar l'saychtei mutter or efshar l'saychtei aser, and that's what Rebbe is saying. I agree with Rav Yehuda that it's a problem generally, but I agree with the Rabbanon when you stirred it the whole time, because when you stirred it the whole time, it never took place of Chanan. There was never an issue of Chanan. Now, just to finish up, the Gemara says, we know there's a machlokes Rav Yehuda the Rabbanon because we know Rebbe agrees with Rav Yehuda in one point and he agrees with the Rabbanon in the other. We've explained the machlokes is efshar l'saychtei aser or efshar l'saychtei mutter. The Gemara says perhaps it's a different approach. Memay de efshar l'saychtei pligi. Dilma efshar l'saychtei divrei kol aser. Maybe everyone agrees efshar l'saychtei is a problem. Everyone agrees that once the meatball is aser, it'll never become mutter. So what's the machlokes Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon? Perhaps the machlokes is not the meatball itself. Everyone agrees the meatball is aser. The machlokes is when you stir it into the pot. Do we say min b'mino lo batal? Meaning perhaps, we looked at it as machlokas on everything. On the pot, on the meatball, and what's the machlokas? Efshar l'saychtei aser, efshar l'saychtei mutter. Perhaps, we don't say it like this. Perhaps the actual meatball itself, everyone agrees is a problem. Because everyone agrees efshar l'saychtei is aser. The machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda the Rabbanon, is whether that meatball asers the rest. What's the machlokas? Do we say min b'mino is batal barov, or min b'mino is not batal at all? Because that meatball is then being mixed in with other meatballs. The Gemara says, "Hacha b'min kamiflgi, b'min b'mino kamiflgi." Rabbi Yehuda tamei, damar min mino lo batal. Rabbanon tamei, damar mino batal. So perhaps the machlokes is not efshar l'saychtei aser. Everyone agrees that meatball is a problem. The machlokes is whether that meatball asers the rest. It has to do with min b'mino, so it's not related to our discussion at all. So just to point one point out, and this will be clear from the Gemara. So let's entertain this thought. Everyone agrees that the meatball itself is aser because chaticha nasas nevela efshar l'saychtei aser. The machlokas then is that aser meatball that gets mixed into the rest. Will it aser the rest? What's the machlokas? Min b'mino batal or min b'mino lo batal. If min b'mino is batal, then the iser meatball will be batal in the rove. And if min b'mino is not batal, then all the meatballs are going to be a problem. Perhaps that's the machlokas. If that's the case, then what does Rebbe mean? Rabbi says, I agree with the Rabbana, I agree with Rabbi Yehuda that it's a problem when you stirred. I agree with the Rabbana when you didn't stir. What does that mean? It means I agree with the Rabbi, according to this, if everyone agrees the meatball's aser, and the whole machlekes is min b'mino batal or not batal, what does Rabbi mean when he says, I agree with you on sometimes, I agree with you not in times? Either you agree min b'mino's batal, or min b'mino's not batal. So the Gemara says, Rashi speaks it out. What it would mean according to this, according to Rabbi, everyone agrees the meatball's aser. Rabbi also agrees that min b'mino's not batal. So it's a problem. So what does it mean? When does he agree with the Rabbanan to be mekel? He only agrees with the Rabbanan in the following case. The milk falls on, and he starts stirring right away. So it never aser the meatball. Even that, Rabbi Yehuda is machmer because Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that you didn't stir it properly, and to that Rabbi is mekel. So according to this, when it says Rabbi says I agree with Rabbi Yehuda and I agree with the Rabbanan, what it really means is like this: I agree with Rabbi Yehuda almost always, but there's one nekuda I don't agree with Rabbi Yehuda, and that is if you stirred the whole time, although Rabbi Yehuda is machmer because he doesn't trust that you stirred it properly, Rabbi agrees that you did stir it properly. So according to this, Rabbi's statement is a little bit more ambiguous. The Gemara speaks it out. The way I know this is not the machlokas, and the machlokas is efshel l'sachto aser. Hi mai, amr b'shleima. If you want to say Rabbanan b'min b'mino hacha k'Rav Yehuda svir lei u be'efshel l'sachto pligi. If the machlokas is by efshel l'sachto, then hainu dekam Rabbi nir div Rav Yehuda baha v'divrecham baha. Then I understand Rabbi. Rabbi is saying, listen. The machlokes is efshel l'sachto aser or mutter. Sometimes I agree with Rabbana, sometimes I agree with the Rabbi Yehuda. Then it works. But if you go with the second approach, and that is everyone agrees the meatball's aser, and the machlokes is min b'mino lo batal or min b'mino batal. So what's Rabbi's opinion? Rabbi's opinion is the meatball's aser. Rabbi's opinion is min b'mino's batal. So what's the time where he holds like the chachamim? It's not that he holds like the Chachamim, it's that he is not agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda's stringency when you stirred the whole time that you didn't stir it properly. So according to this, the Lashon is not Meduyik. It should not be that he agrees with the Chachamim, it's that he doesn't agree with Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, the Lashon does not flow as well according to this approach. The Gemara says, Hi nirin de Rabbi Yehuda, ve'ein nirin de Ba'ilei. It shouldn't be that he agrees with the Rabbanan. He never agrees with the Rabbanan, because he believes Min B'mino's not batal, and he believes Efshel Softa is Aser, so he doesn't agree with the Rabbanan. What he doesn't agree with is Rabbi Yehuda at times. So that's what it should say, Visu loy midi, and this is the end of the discussion. Okay, new topic. We'll begin a new topic today. This topic is often skipped in kashrus. When you learn bas b'chalav, it's often skipped in yeshivas. I learned it once, but it's often skipped in like smicha program, and that is the udder. The udder is a very unique organ because it's a meat organ that has milk in it. Just naturally, the udder has a lot of pockets, flesh pockets in it, and gets filled with milk. So the question is, how does a person eat an udder if you wanted to? We don't eat udders anymore, but I looked into it. The FDA does not approve. Apparently there's a tremendous amount of bacteria about the udder, obviously from the person milking it, the cow. But the udder, how do you eat it? So let me just explain one point. Chalav shchuta, which means the milk of a dead animal, is only d'Rabbanan. So a milk of a dead animal is only d'Rabbanan. So what does that mean? It means that if an animal dies, the milk that comes out of it, if you cook it with meat, is only bas b'chalav d'Rabbanan. So which means every udder,
milk is not considered milk d'oraisa.
if it's from a dead cow, it's chalav shchuta, which is only d'Rabbanan. So that means that the milk of a dead cow is only d'Rabbanan for bas b'chalav. Every time you're dealing with an udder, it's not going to be d'oraisa because it's not from a living cow; it's from a dead cow. So the question is this normally just a classic d'Rabbanan, or is this even better? Because it's not even milk that like I took from a dead cow and then I poured it into a cup. This is, I don't even see it. It's inside the meat itself. So it could be there's more of a leniency. So the Mishnah says like this, Hakechal, regarding the udder, Kairoi, what you have to do, as the Gemara will describe exactly the details, Kairoi, you have to cut it. There's a crisscross pattern that you have to cut and smash it against the wall. You tear it open and extract its milk, and then you can cook it. But if you did not do that, you just cooked it whole, it's not aser. In other words, meaning, the way the Gemara is going to explain, this is Pashas, by the way, talking about roasting, not cooking in a pot. But for roasting in udder, lichatchila, you should extract the milk, but b'diavad, it's fine. There's no iser at all. because roasting it's not sitting in a pot. So roasting, it drips out. So because it's dripping out, and it's chalav shchuta, and the milk is not visible, so lichachilo, you should try to extract the milk, but b'diavad is fine. No isser, meaning if you did it, b'diavad you could eat it. It's fine. Okay. A similar organ that has a lot of stuff in it that's not so good, you have the udder and then you have the heart. The heart has a lot of blood. Halev, koro umotzas dama, you also tear the heart and extract its blood, but loy karo, but if you did not tear it open and you cooked it as is, eino overlove. Eino overlove, there's no isser. Now, eino overlove, the Gemara will describe whether it means Pashas, eino overlove, what it means is there's no isser deraisa, but it is asa derabanan to eat the heart. So the kchol and the heart are not the same. The kchol, if you did not do it and you roasted it whole, it's mutter to eat. You could eat it. There's no isser. Heart, there's no isser deraisa, but there's an isser derabanan. Okay, go to the next page. Rav Zera Merav says, if you have an udder that you did not cut open, but you roasted whole, and the Mishnah says, eino overlove umutter. Because eino overlove does not sound like we're endorsing it. Eino overlove just sounds like there's no isser deraisa. No. Eino overlove, there's no isser deraisa umutter. There's no isser derabanan either. You're allowed to eat an udder that was roasted whole. Says the Gemara, wait a minute, ha'anan tanan eino overlove. But then that's weird. If the Mishnah wanted to say it's mutter, would it say einoi overlove? It would say mutter. So why does it say einoi overlove if it's taka mutter? So the Gemara says, bedin huti yisur nami leka. The truth is there is no isser. So why doesn't it say mutter? Because I'll tell you why. Because the end of the Mishnah says the same lashon by the heart. The heart, it's not mutter. The heart is there's no issa deraisa, but there's an issa derabanan. So because the heart, it had to say einoi overlove, it had to use the same lashon for the udder as well. The Gemara says, "I did the boy limisna seifa halev karo mitzis dama lekare na overlove hasam ever deliavar hasurika." We know that by the heart, if you roasted a heart whole, it's not mutter to eat. It's just there's no issa deraisa, so you can't say mutter by the heart. It had to say einoi overlove. So kechol nami tananami reisha einoi overlove. So it had the same lashon by the udder, but the udder it's actually misleading. If you roast an udder whole, you're allowed to eat it lechachila. You shouldn't have done this. But there's no issa deraisa, there's no issa derabon. Let's prove this, that if you roasted an udder whole, there's no issa derabanan, because it says in the Braisa, hakachol, regarding an udder, kairoyu moitzes chalava, you tear it open and extract its milk, but loy karoi, ein overlove. That's the same lashon as the Mishnah, so I don't see any proof yet. But halev, regarding the heart, kairoyu moitzes damai, loy karoi. Now over here, regarding the heart, notice how after it says if you roast it whole, it doesn't say mutter, and it doesn't say einoi overlove, it says kairoi. Tear it open after it's roasted. Lachar bishuloi umutter. You have to tear it open after it's roasted to try to extract a little bit of blood. So you notice how by the udder, it doesn't say that eitza. It doesn't say koro after. It just says einoi overlove. But the heart, it says koro. So the fact that there's a different lashon implies there's a difference, and that is the leiv. There's an issa derabanan. The kechol is mutter. Says the Gemara, leiv hu debai kriya. It's dafka the heart that requires tearing after roasting. Ava kechol loy bai kriya, but the udder does not. Why? Because the udder is more lenient than the heart, and that's why the heart there's an issa derabanan, but the udder there is no issa derabanan as well. Why are you saying why is it not deraisa? Because cooked blood is only derabanan. Pashas. Says the Gemara, Dam Shabishus Darabana. It was in Pashas. Says the Gemara, conceptually, yeah. There are other reasons, but that's the Pashas. Says the Gemara, yeah. Another reason is because the blood is absorbed within the heart itself. It's not like a cup of blood. Even if you hold that cooking blood is still asa deraisa, over here the blood is absorbed within the heart. You don't see it. It's not like a cup of blood. There's a lot of blood there. So it's konus, and therefore it's only derabban. Says the Gemara, so the fact that the raya is, the fact that the leiv and the kechol have a different lashon. By the leiv it says koreo after. You have to tear it open after the roasting. And the udder does not, indicates that they're not the same. The udder is more lenient. So says the Gemara, that's not a proof that the udder is more lenient. Maybe the udder is more strict. Dilma leiv hu desagile bekriya. Aval kechol loy sagile bekriya. That's not a proof that that's just a proof that the heart and the udder are not the same. Maybe the heart is more lenient. Maybe the heart tearing it open helps. Maybe the udder tearing it open afterwards is not going to help. Meaning maybe it's not going to issa derabanan. So why doesn't it say tear it open? Because there's no purpose of tearing open an udder afterwards. Apparently the udder afterwards, Apparently the heart, because it's smooth, the blood doesn't absorb as much, so maybe tearing it open, the blood will come out, but not the udder. It's not a raya that the all it's a raya is that the heart and the udder are not the same. It's not a raya that the udder is more lenient. Okay, this has all been the first version, which is that if an udder is roasted whole, it's mutter. Ikad Amri, but some have a different version. The Gemara says, Amrav Zera Amarav Eina Over Lava Aser. According to this version, if you roast the udder whole, it's Taka Aser Derabanan. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reverse engineer everything we did. All the proofs are now kashas. Says the Gemara, Le Masayah, let's bring a proof that there's an Issa Derabanan, because it says Eina Over Love. The Mishnah does not say mutter, it says Eina Over Love. Me'ever Hudali Avar HaYisura, which implies that it's taka aser. It doesn't say mutter, it says eina over love. So then the Gemara responds what we had before. No, really, a taka could be mutter. So why doesn't it say eina over love? Because that's the lashon that is needed for the heart. The end of the Mishnah. B'dinu de yisur nami leka. Aidi debai lemisni seifa alev karu maitzes dama le karu eina over love. Dehasem ever d'leyav harisura ika. Tananami reish eina over love. So it's not a raya, as we said before, because it says eina over love. It's not a raya either way, because it's possible that it needed the lashon for the end of the Mishnah. Tashema, kairoi umoitzeis chalavoi. It says in the Brisa that you tear the udder open and extract its milk. Loi karei and overlove. Halev, but regarding the heart, kairoi umoitzeis damai. Loi kairoi lacha b'shuloi. Levu dabai kriya, avol chaloi bai kriya. The Brisa clearly states that if I roast an udder whole, it just says ein overlove. But it says if I roast a heart whole, I can tear it open. Oh, so you see that the heart is more severe. So that's a raya that the udder is not usher at all. It's mutter. So the Gemara says no. Perhaps the udder is actually more of a problem. It's just tearing doesn't help because it's not smooth and therefore it's already absorbed the milk and there's no purpose of cutting. Okay. Tanya Kalishna Kamada Rav, we have a brisa that backs up the first proof of Rav, that is that if a kachal is roasted whole, it's mutter, because the brisa says, kachal shebishlu b'chalvoi mutter. If a udder is roasted whole, it's mutter. Mutter, it says mutter. But there's another part of the animal, by the way, that has milk. You have the udder, and then you have the keva. The keva is the fourth stomach. The fourth stomach will also sometimes have milk. If a baby nurses, there'll be milk in the fourth stomach. That is even worse. The reason being is because the milk is visible. The milk came from another animal, came from the mother animal into that stomach. Therefore, that milk is worse than the udder, which is just natural milk that's found. It was never separated from the meat. Keva shebishu b'chalva, but if I have a keva that I roasted with milk, aser, that's a problem. Uma hefresh bein zeh lezeh. What's the difference between the udder, which roasting is permissible with the milk, not permissible, that the milk doesn't aser if you roasted it together, but the keva, it's a problem. Zeh kanis b'maya, regarding the keva, the milk is collected, it's pooled. V'zeh ein kanis b'maya, as opposed to the udder, which it's not pooled. So how do you we said in the Mishnah that if you want to roast a keva, the udder, you have to tear it open. How do you tear it open? Keitzad kairoi, Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says kairoi shesav erev. You cut it crisscross pattern. V'tachu b'kaisel. And then you have to smash it against the wall to extract the milk. That's the process of removing the milk of the udder. You smash it against the wall. You push it against the wall, and the milk will come out. That's Rav Yehuda's version. Amrle Rav Elazar l'shmai. Rav Elazar once told his gabbai, "Karali v'aneichel, tear it open and I'll eat it." So says the Gemara, "My Kamashlan, what's the point of the story that he said tear it open?" The Mishnah says tear it open. So Rav Elazar told his shamish to tear it open. It's a Mefersha Mishnah. What is Rav Elazar adding? The answer is Hakamash Malon loy ba'inu shesav erev tachu b'kaisel. When Rav Elazar told his gabbai to tear it open, he did not say crisscross pattern. He didn't say smash it against the wall. Rav Elazar just holds cut it open. Just cut it straight. Slash it. This whole crisscross pattern and slashing against the wall is not necessary. Okay, I'll say this. Even if this daf to this point has been a little bit like over or gone or whatever, this next Gemara is very famous. It's a very, very famous Gemara. It's a very sadistic Gemara. And it's a conversation between Yalta and Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman from the Gemara and his wife Yalta had a rocky relationship. She was an interesting woman. She was a fiery woman. She tells us a new yisaid, and it's a big yisaid, and hashkafically it's a very interesting yisaid, and that is everything Hashem asered in this world, there is a counterpart that is permissible. There is a non-kosher food. There is kosher food that tastes like non-kosher food. You could find it. I'm not talking about like bagel bits. Within the world, There's always something that if you want to taste non-kosher, there's a way to find it in kosher. It's an interesting hashkafic perspective. So, Omer Yalta le Rav Nachman. Yalta said to Rav Nachman, Michti, let's see. Called Asur Rachmana, Charlin Kabese. This is a conversation she has with her husband. She says, listen, everything that's Asur, there's a way to experience it in a permissible way. And she goes through examples. Now, by the way, the purpose of why she's saying this is because she wants to taste Basa B'chalav. That's her question. What is Basa B'chalav in the natural world? Then his response is going to be in udder. Okay. So says, what's the example? Asur Landama, right? You're not allowed to eat blood. But what's a permissible way to eat blood? Liver. Right, liver has a bloodish type taste. Supposedly, I don't eat liver. Right, it tastes like irony, mustama, I don't know, whatever. But sharlan kavda, but you're allowed to eat a liver, and a liver is mamish thick. It's basically coagulated blood. So it's blood that's in a permissible way. Nida, right? You're not allowed to have a wife live with your wife who's a nida. But then there's dam toyar. After a woman gives birth, again, not practically nowadays, but conceptually, after the times of Beis Hamikdash, there were days where you could live with her even if she was seeing blood. So there are ways to live with a woman who's a nida. Chalav behema, right? The fats of a behema are aser, but the chaylev of a chaya is permissible. So you could eat the chaylev of a chaya if you want to taste chaylev. Chazer, if you want to taste chazer, then taste moicha de shibuta, the brains of the shibuta fish. Apparently, a shibuta fish was kosher. Its brains had a chazer-like taste. Okay? Girusa, if you want to taste the girusa, which is a non-kosher bird, lishna de kavra, taste fish tongue. Apparently, fish tongue has the same flavor. Okay? Eishes ish, if you want to live with an eishes ish, see, how do you live with an eishes ish? You marry a divorcee whose husband's still alive. So that's a wife, the same way an Eishes Ish is a woman who has a husband who's alive. So a divorcee, the husband's still there. It's close. Eishes Ish is grusha b'chayei b'ayla. Eishes Ach, if you want to live with your brother's wife, that's Yibum. That's a permissible way, Yibum. Kusis, you want to live with a guy. So Yefas Tayar. Yefas Tayar is an Eitzah from the Torah of how to live with a guy. Not that she's not, whatever. So she ends her conversation, I want to taste Basa B'chalav. So Amar Rav Nachman l'tavchi zriku l'tachli. So Rav Nachman said to his chef, put the udder on a spit and roast it. Oh, by the way, for two things. One is he did not cut it open. Okay. One is he did not cut it open. He roasted it whole. The problem is, till now we've been saying you're not allowed to roast it whole. It's just b'di'eved, or if you did. Rabbi Nachman disagrees. Rabbi Nachman holds that roasting whole is permitted l'chachila. L'chachila. The lashon is eina over alav. As we'll see in a moment, that's when you're actually cooking. But roasting, Rabbi Nachman disagrees with what we've learned till now. He believes you're allowed to roast in udder whole l'chachila. And that's what he did for his wife, and that way she'll taste Basa B'chalav. Says the Gemara, Ha'anan Tanan Kaira. Wait a minute, I thought you have to cut the udder open and crisscross. How are you doing it whole? Hahula Kadeira. That's just cooking in a pot. But if you want to roast it over a fire, you don't have to cut it, and it's muter l'chachila. Just to finish up, the Gemara says, "Haketani shebishloi diavid in l'chachiloi." But the lashon is, when it comes to roasting, is shebishlo, which implies only b'diavad. You're telling me it's l'chachila. So the answer is hu adin dafil l'chachila. The truth is, roasting is muter l'chachila without tearing open. So why does the lashon not imply that? I'll tell you why, because the end of the brisa says regarding a keva, the stomach, shebishla b'chalva asur. Because the end of the Mishnah and the end of the brisa talks about a keva. The keva is a mamsh asur, so it can't have a lashon l'chachila because it has to keep a consistency in the Mishnayos. All right, we'll stop here. We'll pick it up tomorrow, B'ez Hashem.